ChatGPT said, have you ever felt like life keeps repeating itself? Different people, different situations, but somehow the same pain, the same disappointment, the same ending. It's as if you're trapped in a loop, watching the same movie over and over, hoping the story will change this time. You tell yourself, I've learned my lesson, but weeks later you find yourself back in the same emotional place, wondering, why does this keep happening to me? It's not fate. It's not bad luck. It's a pattern, a deep, unconscious rhythm that silently directs your thoughts, emotions, and decisions. These patterns are built from past experiences, emotional wounds, and limiting beliefs that have burrowed so deeply into your identity that you don't even question them anymore. They're the invisible strings pulling you toward the same behaviors that once kept you safe, but now hold you back. You might recognize them as the moments you sabotage your own success, push away people who care about you, or talk yourself out of opportunities because fear whispers louder than your potential. You might catch yourself saying, that's just how I am, but what if that's not who you are at all? What if it's just the echo of a story you've been telling yourself for too long? Imagine what would happen if you could break free from that story. Imagine what your life could look like if every choice came from clarity, not fear. If you could silence the inner voice that tells you you're not enough and replace it with one that believes in possibility. Breaking negative patterns isn't about changing who you are. It's about returning to who you were before the world taught you to settle for less. The moment you recognize the pattern, you gain the power to destroy it and rebuild your life from truth, not repetition. ChatGPT said, we all carry within us a collection of behaviors, thoughts, and emotions that shape the quality of our lives. Some of these patterns empower us to grow, achieve, and connect deeply with others, but others quietly sabotage us, keeping us trapped in cycles of fear, frustration, and limitation. These are the negative patterns that dictate how we respond to challenges, how we love, how we think, and even how we see ourselves. The tragedy is that most people never even realize they're caught inside these invisible loops. From the outside, it may seem like circumstances are to blame, a demanding job, a failed relationship, or a missed opportunity. But if you look closer, you begin to see the repetition. The same emotional triggers, the same self-doubt, the same excuses disguised as logic, the same outcomes even when everything else appears to have changed. It's not coincidence, it's conditioning. Over time, we train ourselves to react to life in predictable ways, repeating what feels familiar, even if it causes us pain. The human mind craves familiarity because it feels safe, but safety doesn't equal happiness. Every negative pattern starts as a form of protection. Maybe it was a defense against rejection, failure, or hurt. Perhaps it was a coping mechanism that helped you survive a difficult season of life. But what once protected you is now restricting you. Those old emotional habits no longer fit the person you're becoming. They create an inner conflict, the desire to move forward, clashing with the pull of what's known. Recognizing that you're stuck in a loop is the first step toward freedom. It requires honesty, the courage to admit that the common factor in your repeated struggles isn't life itself, but the pattern running beneath the surface. The moment you acknowledge this truth, something shifts. You begin to see that your patterns aren't permanent. They can be rewritten, reprogrammed, and replaced with new ones that support your highest potential. The process of destroying negative patterns isn't about perfection. It's about awareness, choice, and consistent action. It's about breaking free from emotional autopilot and consciously designing who you want to be. Because when you take back control of your patterns, you take back control of your destiny. That's where true transformation begins. ChatGPT said most people go through life unaware of the patterns that quietly govern their behavior. They wake up, go through the motions, and wonder why they keep facing the same problems again and again. It might show up as constantly choosing the wrong partners, losing motivation right before success, or doubting themselves even when everything seems to be going right. These moments aren't random. They're the evidence of deep-rooted emotional patterns that have taken control. These patterns begin forming early in life. A harsh word from someone you trusted, an embarrassing failure, or a painful rejection can leave a mark so deep that your mind builds walls to protect you from ever feeling that pain again. Over time, those protective walls turn into limitations. They become the filter through which you interpret every situation. When you face something unfamiliar, your brain doesn't ask what's possible. It searches for what's safe, even if that safety leads you straight back into frustration or disappointment. The real problem isn't that these patterns exist. It's that we identify with them. We start to believe the stories they tell us. I'm not good enough. People always leave. I never get lucky. I'll probably fail anyway.
These thoughts may sound harmless, but they quietly shape every decision we make. They influence who we trust, what we attempt, and how much we believe we deserve. Before long, they become self-fulfilling prophecies, proof that reinforces the very pattern we wish to escape. Breaking these loops is difficult because the mind clings to the familiar, even when it hurts. The comfort of predictability often feels safer than the uncertainty of change. That's why so many people stay stuck. They keep rewriting the same story, thinking a new setting or new characters will somehow change the ending. But until the underlying pattern changes, the result will always be the same. The challenge then is not only to recognize the negative patterns running your life, but to confront them with courage. It means looking at the uncomfortable truth that your current results are a reflection of what you've tolerated within yourself. Only when you face that truth can you begin to dismantle the old conditioning and open the door to genuine freedom. ChatGPT said, destroying negative patterns begins with awareness. You can't change what you don't recognize. The first step is to observe yourself without judgment. Notice the moments you feel stuck, triggered, or drained. Pay attention to the situations that repeat and the emotions that surface. When you become conscious of the pattern, you take back power from the automatic responses that once controlled you. Awareness acts like a light shining into the dark corners of your subconscious, revealing what's really been running the show. Once awareness is established, the next step is interruption. Patterns survive because they run unconsciously. When you catch yourself reacting in the same old way, feeling angry, withdrawing, procrastinating, doubting, interrupt the cycle immediately. Change your physical state. Stand up. Breathe deeply, move your body, shout, laugh, do something unexpected. The goal is to shock your system just enough to break the emotional momentum. When you shift your physiology, you change your focus, and your focus determines how you feel. After interruption comes replacement. It's not enough to stop a negative pattern. You must install a new one that empowers you. Decide what emotion, thought, or behavior you want to embody instead. If your pattern is fear, replace it with courage. If it's doubt, replace it with certainty. Train your brain by repetition. Visualize, affirm, and act in alignment with the new pattern every single day. The mind learns through consistency. What you practice becomes who you are. Equally important is the emotional charge behind your change. You can't just think your way into transformation. You must feel it. Create strong emotional associations to your new pattern. Imagine how it feels to live free, confident, and in control. The more emotion you attach to your new identity, the faster it replaces the old one. Lastly, surround yourself with environments that support your growth. Patterns are reinforced by familiarity, so create new experiences that match the person you're becoming. Change your routines, the people you spend time with, and the conversations you allow. Growth happens when you step outside what's comfortable and into what's possible. Destroying negative patterns isn't an event, it's a process of continuous awareness, intentional disruption, and emotional reconditioning. Through this process, you begin to reclaim mastery over your mind, emotions, and life. ChatGPT said, there comes a powerful moment when everything begins to make sense, when you finally see that the struggles, the setbacks, and the repeated disappointments were never random. They were signals, pointing you toward the patterns you were meant to break. It's as if life keeps testing you, not to punish you, but to wake you up. When you realize this, the frustration starts to fade and clarity begins to rise. You see that the power to change has always been within you, waiting for you to claim it. That realization is where transformation begins. It's the instant you refuse to keep living by old emotions, old fears, and old stories. You stop seeking validation from the world and start creating meaning from within. You no longer see yourself as a victim of your circumstances. You become the author of your own life. Every time you choose awareness over reaction, growth over comfort, courage over fear, you rewrite the narrative that once kept you trapped. This breakthrough doesn't always happen in a single flash of inspiration. Sometimes it unfolds slowly, through countless small decisions to think differently, to feel differently, to act differently. Each choice builds momentum, gradually weakening the hold of the old pattern, until one day it no longer defines you. You realize you no longer respond to situations the same way. The anger, the doubt, the guilt, they lose their grip because you've outgrown them. There's immense power in that moment of awakening. It's not just about achieving goals or fixing what's broken. It's about becoming aligned with who you truly are beneath the layers of fear and conditioning. You begin to operate from a place of strength, clarity, and purpose. The people around you notice the difference. Your energy changes, your decisions improve, and opportunities start aligning in ways they never did before. Destroying negative patterns isn't about erasing your past. It's about learning from it, using it as fuel for growth. Every old pattern you break becomes a bridge to a new level of freedom. You begin to realize that your past no longer controls you, it prepares you. And once that awareness becomes your truth, nothing can pull you back into the person you once were. ChatGPT said, "Now is the time to take control. The awareness you've gained means nothing without action. Knowledge is potential power, but transformation only happens when you use it." You've identified the patterns that have been running your life, those loops of fear, doubt, and limitation. The question is, what will you do with that awareness? Will you continue to let the old story define you, or will you rewrite it starting today? Change begins with a single conscious decision. Decide right now that you will no longer live on autopilot. Decide that you will no longer allow the past to dictate your future. You don't need to have everything figured out. You only need to take one step in a new direction. Identify one pattern that has held you back. Maybe it's procrastination, self-criticism, or staying in situations that drain your energy. Choose that one pattern and commit to breaking it today. Interrupt it the moment it appears. Replace it with action, movement, and intention. This is not about perfection. It's about progress. Every time you challenge an old habit, you weaken its power. Every time you choose a response that aligns with your highest self, you build momentum toward freedom. You are not defined by your old emotions or mistakes. You are defined by what you choose to do next. The act of choosing differently, again and again, is what rewires your identity. Create a daily ritual to reinforce your new path. Start each morning by setting your intention. Today I choose awareness. I choose strength. I choose growth. When challenges arise, and they will, pause and breathe. Remember that you are no longer reacting out of fear. You are creating from purpose. Change doesn't happen by accident. It happens by design. You have the power to design your life, your thoughts, your emotions, and your destiny. The moment you decide to take ownership, the world begins to respond differently to you. Don't wait for the perfect moment. This is the moment. Destroy the pattern, step into your power, and show yourself what you're truly capable of. The next chapter of your life is waiting, but it won't begin until you take that first courageous step forward.